So nothing that any of these actors have done has helped to solve this situation. NATO's expansion, terrible idea. Russia's invasion of Ukraine, terrible idea. Because now look where we are. The whole global geopolitical situation that was a complete mess to begin with is now an even bigger mess. We're now getting even closer to the brink of a confrontation between these two sides. I'm Stuart Hooper, a lecturer in political science and PhD researcher. Be sure to subscribe if you are new here to the channel, where I approach international political problems not from the left and not from the right, because that's certainly not going to help us, is it? The Democrats, the Republicans, the Labour Party, the Conservatives, they're not really going to do anything to solve these issues at all. Instead, I approach these things with a critical perspective. On the road to 3,000 subscribers here, and would certainly appreciate you as a regular viewer. Otherwise, be sure to at least hit like, leave me your comments, and share this video everywhere you possibly can, so I can grow my voice as a new critical thinker on foreign policy problems. So yes, it appears that NATO is growing, and it's going to be growing in a rather significant way, with a new multi-hundred-mile border with Russia, now going to be with a NATO nation. Of course, I'm talking about Finland. But Finland is not the only one set to join. Also, Sweden. And an interesting headline here from CNN. The most striking aspect of Sweden and Finland's application to join NATO, and as the author correctly puts in the very first sentence of this piece, the most striking aspect of this application from these countries to join NATO is how little debate there is about whether it's a wise idea. Now, I think it's worth resetting my analysis on Ukraine for new viewers to the channel, of which there have been quite a few of you recently. I have been against the expansion of NATO. The expansion of NATO since the fall of the Soviet Union, end of the Cold War, throughout the 1990s, bad idea. Also, I think we should have been against the war in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, Somalia, Yemen, you name it, Yugoslavia, all these different places. Bad idea. Nothing ever went right in any of those situations. Complete disaster. Why? Because militarism was the chosen option to try to resolve a political problem. That said, we also then should be against Russia's invasion of NATO. If Putin wanted to make a legitimate political argument against NATO expansion, that could have been done. Balance of power, sphere of influence, these are legitimate ideas, legitimate historical basis for a critique against NATO expansion, but instead, he unfortunately chose the same route as our Western leaders did, and chose militarism. Went ahead and invaded Ukraine. Well, what do you think NATO was going to do? Were they just going to back down? Did you think that NATO would just give up? Just turn Ukraine over to Russia? What about anything that NATO's done in the past 20 years would make you reach that conclusion? It was never going to happen. So, of course, the opposite was going to happen. NATO was going to grow. Because now these countries are going to turn around and say, well, we're not going to get invaded because we're part of NATO. We are going to be under the defense of all of those nuclear superpowers, particularly, of course, United Kingdom, United States, France, within NATO, and they are now going to protect us, and we're going to be avoiding an invasion from Russia. Well, the question really is that, will this avoid Russian intervention, or will Putin jump the gun, go ahead, try to do something before this arrangement is formalized in an agreement? It's an option. Now, that being said, as an option, well, that of course then raises the threat, once again, of World War III. So nothing that any of these actors have done has helped to solve this situation. NATO's expansion, terrible idea. Russia's invasion of Ukraine, terrible idea. Because now look where we are. The whole global geopolitical situation that was a complete mess to begin with is now an even bigger mess. We're now getting even closer to the brink of a confrontation between these two sides. We should be far beyond this as a world, as a species, as a political group, as an entity that can think and talk and compromise and reach deals. But we don't choose to do that, of course, do we? We choose to blow each other up instead. Or at least threaten to blow each other up instead. Really, quite a sad state of affairs. And of course, and regular viewers are going to know what I'm about to say next. There is one winner in all of this, of course. And that is called the military-industrial complex. The merchants of death. The arms manufacturers. Those that make and sell these weapons to different countries around the world. Because they, of course, have a vested interest in the continuation of violence. And make no mistake, they are absolutely about to profit from this expansion of NATO. Finland and Sweden to buy firearms, anti-tank weapons together. Yes, didn't take long, did it? But here we are, an article from just yesterday, May the 18th. A couple of days after that these nations announced they want to join NATO, well, now they're announcing that they are ready and able to work together to buy those all-important weapons. And in my last video, I was pretty critical of this $40 billion aid package to Ukraine, which was another $40 billion worth of weapons being sent to Ukraine at the time when most people in the world cannot afford really to fill up their gas tanks or put food on the table or find baby formula for their children or drive on infrastructure that isn't completely falling apart. But, you know, there's $40 billion that can be found like that to go and buy weapons to fight a war, while you, the people that pay those taxes, well, you get nothing, you suffer, and you just have to deal with it. But apparently that wasn't enough. And this, you may think is unbelievable. You may think I'm making this up. I wish I was making this up. But I sit here on Thursday the 19th of May 2022. That $40 billion was just approved. And on the very same day that the $40 billion was approved, the Biden White House has just announced $100 million more in military assistance to the Ukrainian government Thursday afternoon. I mean, what even is there to say at this point? I don't know how many more times I need to come on here and reiterate this same point. Because these people are literally just laughing at you. This is a joke to them. They can find millions, billions of dollars literally overnight to fight a war, and you get nothing. Literally nothing. In fact, you get less than nothing because your wages, your savings, your investments are being erased by inflation. So I don't know, you guys. I don't know how much longer I can come on here and just keep saying the same thing. But in other news, the Ukrainian Azovstal steel plant surrendered at last, meaning that the city of Mariupol, which has been leveled and is now essentially a city of ashes and rubble, has now been fully captured. This is an important point, because what is this going to do for the Russians? Give them a huge morale boost, right at the time when they probably needed it most. Yes, we lost the Moskva. Yes, we couldn't capture Kiev. But look what we just did. We broke the Azov battalion, the far-right neo-Nazi battalion, which is absolutely what that was. We have just broken it. We've now captured Mariupol. Well, that's going to be a huge morale boost for the Russians. So the Ukrainians have had these big morale boosts, like not allowing Kiev to fall, like sinking the Moskva. Now Russia has one. What do you think this means for the war? It means it's going to continue. Both of these sides think they can win. No one can win a war like this. It's a disaster. Thank you guys for making it to the end of this video. Please subscribe if you are new here. Would love to have you along for the ride as I slowly but surely grow this channel. Over the weekend, I would love to do a video on the Disinformation Governance Board, which some of you may have been paying attention to that story. It's a very interesting one, and it just so happens that right now I'm doing some research on government advisory boards for my PhD. So I think I have some interesting points that I can bring to the table on that particular issue. But otherwise, everyone, thank you for your attention. I'll be back with more videos real soon.